Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very good afternoon to you. It's 3 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. Now, as I'm sure you're aware, the first of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations have taken place today, with the Queen watching the royal fly past from the Buckingham Palace balcony. Royal Air Force jets flew in the formation of the number 70 to mark the number of years of Her Majesty's reign. The famous Red Arrows also took part in the display, streaming the Union flag colours above Buckingham Palace. Royal gun salutes are also taking place across the UK today as part of celebrations. Well, the Duchess of Cornwall, the Duchess of Cambridge and her 3 children, George, Charlotte and Louis, waved at the crowds during the carriage procession. The Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cambridge and the Princess Royal rode on horseback in their uniforms. Millions of people are participating in street parties across the nation. These well-wishers were thrilled to be witnessing a historic moment.
We do it really well in Britain, don't we? Nobody like us Brits can put on a show. It is amazing, absolutely amazing.
I was going to say the music for me, the band was probably my number one, but I did have a glimpse of Princess Anne on her horse as well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you saw Princess Anne, didn't you?
It was just lovely, and then there was all the carriages with Kate and Camilla and all those. It was just lovely, wasn't it? Yeah. We're so glad we came. We ummed and ahed, but it was a lot of hard work to get here and so busy, but worth every minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Amongst the celebrations, police arrested several protesters who entered the ceremonial route on the Mall ahead of Trooping of the Colour in central London. Animal rebellion demonstrators were dragged out of the way by police as a military band marched along the path at around 10 a.m. The Met Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe says the force is working hard to give people a safe and fun day in the capital.
This is a huge operation for the Met. Many thousands of police officers and staff have been working with partners from government, from the local authority, the event organisers, to ensure that everyone coming can enjoy a really safe and secure event.
More than 1,000 people have been honoured in the Queen's Jubilee Honours List. Medical staff who worked through the COVID pandemic are among them, including the NHS Director, Professor Stephen Powis, who's going to be made a Knight. Also, Chief Nursing Officer Ruth May will be made a Dame. The actor Damian Lewis has been made a CBE, and the crime writer Ian Rankin has been knighted on the Queen's birthday list, while the former Northern Ireland First Minister and GB News presenter Arlene Foster has been made a Dame.
Well, of course, it's a personal honour and I'm really delighted with it, but I hope it will be reflected back on the people of Fermanagh and South Tyrone who give me such support when I was their member. And indeed, as I say, as the first female First Minister, it's wonderful to have this acknowledgement.
In some other news now, and emergency doctors are warning there's no give in the system as they expect extra pressure over the bank holiday weekend. The Society for Acute Medicine says that longer ambulance waits and long stays in emergency departments are expected over the 4-day break. NHS bosses are advising people to use services wisely and to call 111 for non-urgent medical needs. In international news, and President Zelensky says Russia now occupies a fifth of Ukraine's territory. The Ukrainian leader says 100 people are dying every day in fighting in the east. It says British military intelligence says Russia has control of most of the strategically important city of Severodonetsk. The actor Johnny Depp says he feels he's got his life back after winning his defamation lawsuit against his ex-wife Amber Heard.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
The jury unanimously found she acted with malice in a 2018 article in which she claimed she was a victim of sexual violence. Johnny Depp wasn't in court for the hearing. He was in a pub in Newcastle when it emerged he'd been awarded £12 million worth in damages. Amber Heard was separately awarded £1.6 million after jurors found Mr Depp's lawyer defamed her when he called her abuse claims a hoax. This is GB News, and I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head to Darren for this afternoon's briefing.
Thank you very much indeed, Rosie, and a very good afternoon to you, and welcome to the briefing. I'm very happy to say that today's show is a Partygate-free zone. We're going to be focusing very much on the happy Platinum Jubilee to Her Majesty, the royal family, and the nation, particularly you, our GB News viewers at home. If you don't have a glass in hand, why not? And if you do, it's possible you're struggling to remember the last few hours of royal pageantry. So allow us here at GB News to take you back through some of the best moments and pictures from today's events in central London. First, there was the trooping of the colour parade at Horse Guards. Here are the Duchess of Cornwall, the Duchess of Cambridge, and her three children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, all leaving Buckingham Palace to make their way up the Mall. Then, of course, the parade itself. Around 200 horses and riders form part of this tradition that marks the sovereign's birthday, stretching back over 260 years. Around 1,400 troops marched their way around the Horse Guards parade to the sound of military bands. All this was watched keenly by thousands of people who were lucky enough to see the pageantry firsthand. The proportion of the trooping of the colour at Buckingham Palace at an end. It was watched by Her Majesty the Queen, accompanied by Prince Edward, the Duke of Kent, a cousin, of course, Prince Edward's father, George being a brother of the Queen's father, King George VI. There she is on the balcony, the first time we've seen her at Buckingham Palace since before the pandemic. Then, of course, the part we'd all been waiting for, that fly past, a vast number of RAF aircraft being involved. One of our favourite moments was the display by the Typhoon fighter jets, some of the most advanced in the Air Force, commemorating Her Majesty's 70 years on the throne. But of course, in the year marking 70 years, nothing can beat the display put on by the famous Red Arrows, the finest precision fighting squad in the world, pumping the patriotic red, white and blue smoke into the sky as they rode over Buckingham Palace to wild applause from the crowds. All of this was watched by assembled members of the royal family and Her Majesty the Queen herself on that famous balcony. And of course, another royal tradition, children covering their ears from the noise and making faces. Prince Louis taking on that mantle this year. There he is at the centre bottom right. Well, let's cross over now live to our royal reporter, Cameron Walker, who is live at Buckingham Palace for us this afternoon. Cameron, good afternoon. To you, I was there in central London among those crowds at an amazing atmosphere on an historic day.
Good afternoon. It was so electric here. It was a historic moment. The first time ever in Great Britain we have celebrated a Platinum Jubilee. 70 years of service Her Majesty the Queen has given to this country. So we started off with Trooping the Colour today, the first part of the Jubilee bank holiday weekend. And it's the first time actually it's happened since 2019, Darren, because of the coronavirus pandemic. But the 1st Battalion of the Irish Guards was the regiment who were trooping their colour in front of Prince Charles, actually, this year due to the Queen's ongoing mobility issues at Horse Guards Parade. Prince William is the Royal Colonel of the 1st Battalion Irish Guards. His children were there watching from the Major General's office overlooking Horse Guards Parade. That's Prince George, Charlotte and Louis. Also Prince Harry and Meghan, we are led to believe, were also in that building watching on, but they were very much kept out of the cameras and out of the public eye on that one. They then rode back to Buckingham Palace behind me and the Queen stood out on the balcony with the Duke of Kent to take part in a royal salute. She was then joined about half an hour later by the extended members of the royal family, the working members of the royal family, for that amazing fly past of 70 aircraft from the Royal Air Force, Royal Navy and British Army, the biggest fly past since the RAF centenary in 2018. Now, speaking of almost a century, 70 years in fact, let's take a look back on Her Majesty the Queen's extraordinary life.
Inevitably, a long life can pass by many milestones. My own is no exception.
Her Majesty the Queen speaking in 2015 when she overtook her great-great-grandmother Queen Victoria as Britain's longest reigning monarch. This year, we celebrate her Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne. Trooping the Colour is a large part of June's celebrations and has marked the official birthday of the British sovereign for more than 2 centuries. 96 years ago, the then Princess Elizabeth was born, not in a palace, but in a townhouse. She wasn't expected to be queen, but her uncle, King Edward VIII's sudden abdication to marry an American divorcee propelled Elizabeth up the line of succession.
I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service.
Even on her birthday, Her Majesty continues with duties and works through her daily red box of government papers. 14 British Prime Ministers have served her, as well as 15 Australian and 12 Canadians. She has advised and guided each of them through troubled times, while always knowing when to lighten the mood.
Thank you, Mr. Prime Minister of Canada, for making me feel so old.
Last night, a specially commissioned Platinum Jubilee portrait was released to mark the beginning of the celebrations. The Queen hopes that the coming days will provide an opportunity to reflect on all that has been achieved during the last 70 years as we look to the future with confidence and enthusiasm. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, at about 9 o'clock this evening, the principal beacon will be lit here at Buckingham Palace behind me. 3,000 of these beacons are going to be lit across the country and indeed the globe. It will be a kind of a dual ceremony. Her Majesty the Queen will take part from Windsor. The Duke of Cambridge will take part from Buckingham Palace. Tomorrow we're expecting a service of Thanksgiving. Her Majesty the Queen perhaps will be attending that, or she will be using a separate entrance so she doesn't have to walk up those steep steps up to St Paul's Cathedral. And then on Sunday we're expecting a big pageant here going from Westminster Abbey down Whitehall, up the Mall to Buckingham Palace, representing Her Majesty the Queen's 70 years of service. So a lot to look forward to this Jubilee Bank Holiday weekend.
Indeed, Cameron, and of course I think the stage is set literally behind you there, isn't it, for a big Jubilee concert as well?
Yes, there is a big Jubilee concert happening on the Saturday night. We're expecting Queen to open that concert along with Adam Lambert. We understand Julie Andrews will also be saying a few words to the crowd. I think it was a public ticket ballot and thousands of people applied. So I think there is also a royal box, so members of the royal family are expected to also be watching that concert. We also are led to believe that a lift has been installed for Her Majesty the Queen if she so chooses to attend. However, it's looking unlikely. We've had no feeling or rumours that perhaps that's going to be the case. But yes, a big kind of whole weekend of celebration, Darren.
Thank you very much indeed. Cameron will bring you that coverage throughout the weekend here on GB News. Thank you, Cameron. Well, there's a whole lot of other stuff happening around the country as well. Events happening up and down the United Kingdom, including in East Yorkshire, where there's the reenactment of the Humber flotilla of 60 boats in 2012, when the Town Council celebrated the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and the historic date back in 1897, when watermen gathered their boats on the Humber in celebration of Queen Victoria's 60-year reign. Well, our reporter Annie Riley is at Hull Marina, where the boats have been sailing, and sent us back this dispatch.
Yes, I'm here at Hull Marina, where a spectacular event is planned. There's going to be a flotilla of boats that are coming from the marina to mark the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. And I'm here with Captain Phil Cowing. He's organised all this. Phil, tell us why it's so unique, this event here in Hull.
Well, this time round, we're very proud of the fact that we are the only maritime city putting on a floating event. 10 years ago we did one, but we took sort of side stage to the Thames, which was centre stage on that occasion. But we put one on the next day, very successful, well enjoyed. So this time round, we're proud to do bigger, better, and be the only one. So that is quite a thing for us in the city of Hull and the East Yorkshire region.
definitely a big thing for this area. And just tell me about what the plan is. You are the pilot, aren't you, for the first ship?
I'm retired harbour master, so I, as event organiser, I'm on the lead craft this evening on ABP's pilot launch, and we will be mustering outside the marina from 6 o'clock tonight. All the vessels we see behind us, 27 craft, will be leaving the marina from about 5:30 onwards, and then there'll be craft coming up, large and small, from Grimsby, some from sea, some from upriver. So there'll be a real sort of busy atmosphere out in the river between 6 and 7. Then at 7 o'clock, well, just before 7, there'll be 2 Spitfires flying over from east up to the Humber Bridge. Once they've flown past, that's the curtain raiser, and we set off gracefully upriver, and the flotilla will get in order behind us. The flotilla will be about a mile long in total, and off we go up to the Humber Bridge. We'll be there about 8:10. We turn round and we head back, arriving back off the marina at about 9:15. So then, some of the craft will come back into the marina. At 9:45, as you probably know, all around the country, the beacons will be lit, including here in the marina and upriver towards the Humber Bridge. And then the pièce de résistance for us tonight is that just before 10 o'clock, there will be a floating fireworks spectacular about a mile downstream of the Humber Bridge, and that will conclude the spectacle.
Thanks so much, Phil. It certainly does sound like a spectacle, and if you are in the area, certainly get yourself along, because it sounds like it's going to be a brilliant event.
It does indeed, Anna. Well, from Yorkshire to the northeast now, because street parties to pageantry and banners to buzzing, millions of people across the country and around the world are celebrating the Queen's 70th reign, including filmmakers in the northeast of England who've been delving into the vaults to create a special tribute to Her Majesty. Our reporter Rachel Sweeney has been finding out more.
From Queen Elizabeth's post-coronation visit to Tyneside in 1953 to Her Majesty opening the Tyne and Wear metro system in 1981.
And I have great pleasure in declaring the Tyne and Wear metro system open.
Royal visits to the northeast have been proudly documented by local filmmakers. To mark the Platinum Jubilee, the North East Film Archive has pulled together amateur and professional footage from across the region to create a special film called Seen to be Believed.
This completed film was later shown in communities across the region so that everyone could experience the excitement of the visit.
Graham Relton is the archive manager. He says the film takes an affectionate look at the North's relationship with Her Majesty.
I love to see it's less about the Queen, it's more about the people and how they've celebrated and how they've come together. And interestingly, things haven't changed a great deal. It's still trestle tables, it's still bunting, it's still people getting dressed up in fancy dress and celebrating as a community. The Queen obviously is important, but I think it's a great excuse for people to come together.
One of the contributors is Chris Anderson, who filmed the Queen's Silver Jubilee in 1977.
Filmmaking has been my, not so much professional life, but amateur, if you see what I mean, but for 45 years, and I absolutely love it. And the fact that there's something come out of it like this, just the icing on the cake, or the icing on the Jubilee cake in this case.
And it's not just Video Archive the Northeast remembers, it's those royal front pages too.
Probably the first royal visit to our area in 1956 when...
Chris Lloyd covers royal visits for the Northern Echo.
People actually standing on top of lampposts and things, eager, craning to get a view of her. And that's really the situation really throughout our archives tell how for decades these rare visits have been real highlights of people's lives, really. It's amazing the way that she's able to touch people.
Including Peter Barron, MBE, who was the Northern Echo editor for 17 years. He was invited to a private function at Windsor Castle and regrets picking up that canapé.
I dropped the beetroot and puree canapé on this very plush pink carpet in the middle of Windsor Castle, and it just left this horrible purple and green smudge on the Queen's carpet. And she started to walk towards us, and I said to the editor of the Oxford Mail it was, what am I going to do? And he said, scoff it. So I had to pick it up and eat this pureed pea and beetroot canapé full of fluff, and within 30 seconds the Queen was there shaking hands.
He won't forget that. The region won't forget the scenes of celebrations. The nation will never forget the Platinum Jubilee. Rachel Sweeney, GB News.
Amazing footage there, going back in time from Yorkshire and the northeast of England. People remembering the Queen, who's reigned, of course, over us for 70 years. Up and down the country, and as Cameron was saying, this is only the start of a weekend of celebrations. Coming up, though, we'll be getting reaction from beyond these shores, from the Caribbean and from Australia. How is the Commonwealth celebrating the Queen's Jubilee? But before all of that, let's bring you up to date with the all-important weather. And looking ahead to this evening, it is going to be fine dry, with plenty of warm sunshine for most, though there is rain in Northern Ireland. Let's have a look at the details now. Let's zoom into the southwest, where we can see there's plenty of sunny spells with just a little cloud bubbling up, which could produce an isolated shower or so, but it's going to stay mostly dry. If we head to the east, the weather is pretty much the same. Lots of warm, sunny spells, with a little cloud bringing the risk of an isolated light shower. Let's head to Wales now. It's going to be mostly dry again with warm, sunny spells, though we could see a couple of clouds and they could produce an isolated shower. If we head eastwards into the Midlands, the weather's again set to stay remain mostly dry with sunny spells throughout this evening, although again we could see a bit of drizzle here and there. If we head to the northeast, there is a chance of a shower. That's going to increase quite a little, potentially an odd heavy shower is possible there as well, though it will remain mostly dry for most people. And it's a similar picture as we move across the north and into southern Scotland, mostly dry with sunny spells, but there is expected to be an occasional heavy shower, particularly in the east. In Northern Ireland, it's going to be mostly cloudy with the best of the brighter spells likely in the east of the province. Outbreaks of locally heavy rain, though, will slowly edge across eastern areas, and the rain, when it clears, it'll develop showery spells over northern England and northern Wales. But elsewhere, most of us at least should remain dry throughout the night, and the weather shaping up into tomorrow morning.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dewbs Co.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Very welcome back to GB News on this very special day, of course celebrating the Queen's 70 years on the throne, her Platinum Jubilee. We've been hearing a lot, haven't we, about how the Mall was packed with people today, so packed that many people were streaming other parts of central London, down Whitehall and the Embankment, all there to join in the celebrations for those Jubilee parties, and celebrations have been taking place in central London and indeed around the country. But we caught up with a few of the revellers that were on the Mall about why they'd turned up and what they thought about the Queen's reign.
Done an amazing job, absolutely. Who else would want to do that for 70 years? Just magnificent. When I got up this morning, I said to my husband, I wonder what time the Queen's going to get up today. I know she's not going to do all of it, but she'll be on the balcony later on.
We love her. I think she brings people together, and yeah, she's just such an icon of Britain.
Yeah, I think the crowd today shows how people feel about her. Everyone loves her, everyone's here to celebrate her. Yeah. And congrats, Lizzie.
Yeah,
emotional. Yeah.
I wanted to see it because it's a really special Jubilee, and it's the Queen's first big Jubilee.
Yeah, and we just, we're never going to see a Jubilee of this 70 years ever in our lifetime, and our child's lifetime probably, so we thought we've just got to be here.
Truly historic day indeed, but it's a day that's not just being celebrated here in the UK, but indeed around the world, most notably in the Commonwealth. Of course, the Queen remains head of state in many countries around the world, and that includes Australia. Let's go to Perth now, where we're joined by Anna Moran. She's the host and curator of the Brit-Zillion podcast.
Yes.
For British expats. It is clearly the middle of the night there, or quite late on, isn't it, Anna? Have people been out celebrating today? Will they be out this weekend down under?
I'd say most people are celebrating at home by watching the events on telly, and actually they're all staying up quite late. I run a community for British expats here in Australia, and many of them online are talking about how they're watching the all the celebrations happening over in the UK on the television, and they plan to be watching them all night. So, yeah, the British expats here are really excited and missing home, really missing home.
No, I'm sure they are. Is it simply the expats? Because I was just saying the Queen is the head of state there, isn't she, of course? She's the monarch to Australians as well. Is enthusiasm for the monarchy still pretty strong down in Australia?
It varies. I mean, I think it's mostly the British expats who will be tuning in and getting excited. The Aussies, some of them do, and some of them probably will. But I think it'd be more. It's the expats who are missing home and who are really. It's a time that people will be really thinking about what they're missing out on.
Now, of course, the winter time, isn't it, in Australia? Lots of people are having street parties here across the UK. Any sense that that's happening where you are? I mean, it's probably a bit cold for the barbecue. Maybe not in Perth, but further down south.
I have actually noticed that people there are wearing T-shirts, and I thought it was quite funny that you're in the UK and here we are in Australia, and I'm in a jumper and a shirt, as you can see. You know, it's cold over here. Not outdoors necessarily, but there are events happening at British venues over here. So there are like some British pubs and cafes, and they've got their own little events going on over the weekend where they're serving British food. One of the pubs here in Perth is serving cocktails in teapots, which I thought was quite a nice touch to celebrate.
And buildings have been lit up as well in different parts of the country.
That's right, 80 buildings in total across the country, all iconic buildings. You've got even the Sydney Harbour Bridge is being lit up in the royal purple colour. Yeah, it's quite nice. So we've got in Perth, there's a really big park, Kings Park, it's beside the city, and there's a big tree-lined street that overlooks the city there, and all of that's lit up in purple. It's absolutely beautiful.
OK, Anna, really, really good stuff. I hope you have a great time along with everyone else over the next couple of days. Have fun, enjoy. Thank you very much indeed. I think we've got a picture of the Queen, portrait of the Queen that's been released to celebrate her 70th year on the throne. There she is, looking resplendent as ever at Windsor Castle. As I say, she celebrates 70 years on the throne, an historic first for Britain, and she's only, I think, we heard this from the French earlier on, she's only 2 years shy of beating the world record, Louis XIV, who was on the throne for just over 72 years. It is entirely possible that our monarch will become the longest-serving monarch in world history. What a time to celebrate, as millions of you are up and down. OK, we're going to pause this afternoon because coming up in just a couple of minutes, we're going to have an exclusive behind look at the Elizabeth Tower. That is, of course, part of Parliament, where Big Ben is. We'll be looking at that with Tom Harwood in just a couple of minutes. But first, it's 3:30. Let's bring you up to date with the latest news headlines and head back to Rosie.
A very good afternoon. It's 3:31. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date on GB News. The first of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations have taken place today, with the Queen watching the royal fly past from the Buckingham Palace balcony. Royal Air Force jets flew in the formation of the number 70 to mark the number of years of Her Majesty's reign. The famous Red Arrows also took part in the display, streaming the Union flag colours above Buckingham Palace. Royal gun salutes are also taking place across the UK as part of the celebrations. President Biden and the First Lady sent Her Majesty a message for the Jubilee and thanked her for her friendship to the American people.
Your Majesty, congratulations on your Platinum Jubilee. For 70 years, you've inspired people with your selfless devotion and service to the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth.
Throughout the years, the joy your visits to the United States have brought Americans and your solidarity with the American people in times of tragedy have deepened the friendship and profound connection between our countries.
On behalf of the people of the United States, we send you our best wishes to you and the people around the world marking this momentous and historic occasion.
The NHS Director, Professor Stephen Powis, is among over 1,000 people who've been recognised in the Queen's Jubilee Honours list. He's going to be made a knight, whilst the Chief Nursing Officer, Ruth May, will be made a dame. The actor Damian Lewis has been made a CBE, and the Scottish crime writer Ian Rankin has also been knighted. Meanwhile, the former Northern Ireland First Minister and, of course, GB News presenter Arlene Foster has been made a dame. In some brief international news for you now. President Zelensky says Russia now occupies a fifth of Ukraine's territory. The Ukrainian leader says 100 people are dying every day in fighting in the east of the country. Well, British military intelligence says Russia has control of most of the strategically important city of Severodonetsk. TV, online and DAB+ radio, this is GB News.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound is 1.254 to the dollar. The pound is 1.172 to the euro. The price of gold currently stands at £1,488.03 per ounce.
Direct Bullion sponsors the Finance Report on GB News for gold and silver investment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
A very welcome back to GB News and our special coverage of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, 70 years on the throne. Just bring you up to date with a bit of breaking news related to all of this that's come in the last minute or so here to us at GB News, and that is the Duke of York, that's Prince Andrew, has tested positive for COVID, for coronavirus, and will no longer attend the Jubilee service of Thanksgiving at St Paul's Cathedral that's due to be held tomorrow. Of course, the Queen will be in attendance at that, along with many other senior members of the royal family. But that news just coming in from Buckingham Palace in the last couple of minutes, that Prince Andrew, the Duke of York, who of course has been involved in an awful lot of controversy over the last year or so, he will not attend that Jubilee service, and that's because he's tested positive for coronavirus. We'll bring you more on that as we get it. Now, the Elizabeth Tower, that's part of Parliament, named after the Queen, of course, for her Diamond Jubilee 10 years ago. Well, it's been up in scaffolding, wrapped in scaffolding for the last couple of years. Big Ben also hasn't bonged for many years, but it's now been unfurled and Big Ben is getting ready to bong again. And our correspondent, Tom Harwood, has had exclusive access behind the scenes to see the results of the £80 million renovation. Enjoy.
Over the last 5 years, the clock tower has been renewed, restored, and we'll be being able to see today exactly what's gone on. The masonry, the history, and everything else. It's up these stairs, and I'm excited to show you.
I'm Ian Westworth, and my duty here is to look after the Great Clock of Westminster and about 2,000 other clocks on the estate.
How close is this now to how it will have been when it was first set up?
It's very close. We've taken it right back to every nut and bolt we've had a look at. Through time, there's been a couple of modifications to it, but if Dent came back here, the man who designed the clock, if he came back here, he would certainly recognise what he designed, and we'd keep it running for him.
And what are these words that are cast into the face of the mechanism here? What do they say?
It actually says that the clock was designed by Sir Edmund Beckett Denison in 1854. They actually built it, but it wasn't actually brought into the palace for a long time because the tower wasn't ready for it, because there was building work going on. We'll gild all the letters across the front so it stands out
What has been the most difficult aspect of restoring this huge clockwork? I imagine that there must have been wear and tear over time.
Yeah, the 160 years that it's actually been running, it's been remarkably good. It was built fantastically. It's over-engineered, most Victorian stuff is. The biggest problem we had is just the sheer logistics. The clock itself, just the bits, we took away nearly 11 tons of metalwork when we stripped the whole clock out. And we're up in the top of a tower, so everything had to go down the tower, get moved to Cumbria, where we did all the restoration work, then bring it all back, and then bring it back up the tower to reassemble it where it is sitting now.
It just had a big clunk as you were speaking there. What was that? Was that a minute going by?
No. So what it's done, it's moved a series of levers, and if all the weights were connected, you would have heard even a bigger clunk, and it would have got ready to strike and chime 1/4
And there's no electricity at all in this mechanism. It's all powered by weights in exactly the way it was when it was designed.
Yes. Once we finished all the trials that we're doing at the moment, all the testing, the only electricity we use is to help us wind the weights back up. Because at the moment we've got a 1.25 tons underneath the chiming train. We have a ton of weight underneath the strike train and just a 1/4 ton under the going train. So we wind them up every Monday, Wednesday and Friday. And that gives us enough power to last till the following wind-up, really.
And they slowly tick down, and I suppose that also turns those enormous minute and hour hands on those 4 clock faces. Yet not all of those 4 clock faces, as we speak, are all moving at the same rate. Some of them are frozen in time. Why is that?
What the west dial at the moment is stopped because there's some work going on just behind where the clock dial is. So to stop dust and debris getting into the dial itself, which is exactly why we stopped it in the first place, to stop all the dust. Once you get dust into a clock, it just wears it away really fast. So now we've got some more dust in there. We've stopped that dial to stop it wearing, but the other 3 dials have been driven by the clock that's behind you now.
And when can we expect this all to be ready to reopen?
Ready to open later this year, and when we'll have it all back in its former glory.
And does that mean that in order to avoid the dust getting back into the mechanism, it needs to be sealed off? Will this be a part of the whole mechanism that not many people will be able to see?
No, that once all the building work's finished, the clock then turns back into quite a clean environment. The only dust will be people bringing their dust in off the street, which is very minimum. It's brick dust and metal dust, grinding metal, that's the big problem for us. Once everybody's gone, we'll clean the clock through again, just to make sure that we've got rid of everything, and then it'll keep ticking. And what we'll do in the future, we just keep on servicing it and inspecting it for the rest of its life, just making sure it keeps going.
It must have been an incredibly rewarding project. This is probably the most famous clock in the world. What's been your biggest highlight over the last 5 years of restoration?
Biggest highlight was... Well, there's the highlights and lowlights. The low light was when we stopped the clock and we silenced the bells. That's a big shock because my job up till then had been keeping them running. But the big highlight will be when the bells come back on and we start striking and chiming the hour. People on the street outside will be looking up again and saying, oh, there's Big Ben, doesn't it look beautiful after the restoration? And it's just once everybody's gone from in here, just being able to sit in here and listen to the tick of the clock. That'll be well worth the 5 years of work.
Hello, I'm Mark Collins. I'm the estates historian at the Palace of Westminster.
This tower, this clock tower, has started to lean.
Yes, it was probably leaning quite early on in its history, but now it's about 200 millimetres out at the very top. It leans over to the northwest, but it's not going to move any farther because when they built the Jubilee line, which runs adjacent to the tower, they pumped a great deal of concrete as cement underneath the tower, so it's very stable now.
Was there a risk that this tower could have become sort of a new Leaning Tower of Pisa? Was there a risk that without that work being done, this could become really quite dangerous?
Well, the Leaning Tower of Pisa actually was in a much more dangerous state, actually, but the same engineer, Professor Burland, was in charge of work on the Tower at Pisa and managed to stabilise that, and worked here at Big Ben as well in the 1990s, so he knew exactly how to carry out the work.
So this is incredibly exciting. We're behind the actual clock face of the tower. Can you speak to how this has been restored?
The dials, which are 23 feet across, they're about 7 meters wide, are made of cast iron segments which have been bolted together, and they have 324 panes of mouth-blown, hand-cut glass in them, this pot opal glass, which gives a white, milky effect with the lights behind them. We did some research for the colours on the exterior, so it's always been black since the 1930s.
And has that been soot? Has that just been because London was so smoggy?
It's probably a very good point that, in fact, they painted them black because they had gone so dirty in the London atmosphere at that time. This is before the Clean Air Act. And so we looked at old watercolours and drawings from the specifications and found that, in fact, it was blue that they'd used. And when we did paint sampling as well on the exterior, we discovered that, in fact, that was the case. And it's this royal blue, it's Prussian blue, in fact, and very vivid, very rich colour.
But it's not just the face of the clock, because also all of the paraphernalia around the outside, the flowers of the different nations of the United Kingdom, and also the sort of shields below those flowers, which have been completely transformed in their colour.
And so you've got the thistle, you've got the shamrock, the leek, and the rose for England. They've been given new, fresher colours, which were quite bright. We think of the Victorians as being a bit dark, a bit gloomy. But there are also some shields which show the Red Cross of St George. They'd been painted black in the 1930s as well, but we've brought back the red of St George. The floral emblems are at a higher level, so all parts of the United Kingdom are actually represented on the outside of the tower.
And of course, we're standing in front of some big bulbous protuberances from the wall. And these are to light up the clock face.
Yes, that's right. Originally, they were gas-lit, all the dials, in the first instance, but then gradually electricity was brought in. Now we've made them much more environmentally friendly. So the whole tower has been given a green makeover.
And these are LEDs now,
yes,
which
LED,
don't use much electricity at all, but also I hear they can do something quite special. They can change colour if we so choose.
Yes, that's right. If there's a desire now, so many buildings around the world have different colours, either projected on them or from the inside, we can do that as well.
So we're up in the belfry, and could you just explain a little bit about the history of these different sized bells and actually the famous Big Ben itself?
Big Ben is the second iteration of the bell, because in 1856 they cast the first one, but it was tested too much with too large a hammer in New Palace Yard, and it broke. So they had to melt it down and create the second Big Ben. It weighs 13.7 tons, and it strikes after the 4 quarter bells have chimed the tune, which is so familiar, the Westminster chimes. They were taken from Great St Mary's Church in Cambridge, which the man who specified the bells, Edmund Beckett Denison, knew because he was an undergraduate at Cambridge.
And ever since the 1850s, this particular bell, Big Ben, has been sitting here in this tower.
Yes, that's right. Yes, it had to be taken up on its side through a shaft inside the tower in a wooden cradle. It had to be winched up over a couple of days. And then it was put in place and tested over the next month or two. But it too cracked. So they reduced the size of the hammer, turned the bell a little, and after a year or two, it was working properly as we hear it today.
And of course, for the last 5 years, we haven't been hearing those regular bells. We've only heard them on certain special occasions. How difficult has it been to get the bell to ring while all this work has been going on?
It was very important to silence Big Ben and all the bells as people were working on it for health and safety reasons. So yes, for 5 years we haven't heard it, and it's only now that we're able to put it back together with the clock, and we're undertaking the tests at the moment. But it has been used on Remembrance Sunday and New Year's Eve with a temporary mechanism. So it is possible to do that, and we'll keep that temporary mechanism for occasions when we might be repairing the clock in the future.
Back in January 2020, there was a big political kerfuffle over whether or not this particular bell would ring on the 31st of January on Brexit Day. And indeed, the Prime Minister came up with a phrase, bung a bob for a Big Ben bong. Was it particularly difficult, intricate, or indeed expensive to deliver that temporary mechanism?
It wasn't particularly difficult, but it was something we couldn't unfortunately carry out for the Brexit day, because we were still working on the tower. It has been delayed by COVID, so we couldn't spare any time at all, I'm afraid. The materials for the tower have come from the United Kingdom, so the stone originally came from Anston, which is between Sheffield and Worksop in South Yorkshire, and we've been able to source some stone Cadeby from near Doncaster, which is of the same variety. The stairs and the landing on which we're standing is made from Hopton wood stone, a very hard limestone, which comes from Matlock in Derbyshire. And so from all over the country, you've had these materials brought, and from all over the country, people have come to help repair it.
This sounds like it's the most enormous cost. How much cash has been poured into this project to preserve this tower?
Well, the last business case it gave a figure of £79 million altogether, rather higher than we'd expected because of COVID. So the delays for that reason have added about £9 million, unfortunately, to the cost. But of course it's worth it. I mean, it is the supreme totemic symbol of London, of Parliament, and of the United Kingdom.
And at what point will the general public be able to book tours of this place? Will people be able to visit anytime soon?
So by the winter, we'll be inviting all UK residents are welcome to come here by applying through their MP.
The tallest clock tower in the world of its time.
That's right. And after the Victoria Tower at the other end of the building, which is the Queen's State entrance as she arrives for state opening, this was the second tallest square stone tower in the world.
Why have we had this sort of cocoon of scaffolding for so long? And what is being saved as well as renewed over the course of the last 5 years?
So the tower has been repaired 3 times during the 20th century using scaffolding. In fact, originally the tower didn't have any scaffolding around it at all. It was built from the inside, hauling up all the materials from the inside and using a special gantry which was jacked up as the tower rose. But this time we're giving it the largest repair and conservation programme it's ever had.
So we've come up to the tallest point of Elizabeth Tower, and I have to say the views are absolutely spectacular. All around you can see the rest of the Palace of Westminster. We can swing round to the north and see actually Buckingham Palace in all of its splendour in that sea of green, and all the rest of Whitehall as well. It's really quite the most miraculous view up here. And curiously also an electric light. Can you tell us a bit about the history of that?
Yes, this was the installation which came just a little bit later than the construction of the tower itself, and it's called the Ayrton light, and it's a signal light which is switched on when Parliament is sitting after dark, so that MPs know, and members of the House of Lords, they know when the House is sitting. And it's been here since the 1880s. First of all, they tried out experiments for electric light in the 1870s from from up here, and they thought that they would be able to light all the streets around the clock tower at that point.
It must have been the most amazing time of discovery, of learning what electricity could do.
Yes, that's right. These were very early days indeed, and they went on to trial electric light very soon after this on the embankment, but they found that they couldn't generate enough, so they went back to gas. But within the next decade, in the 1880s, they were starting to light other parts of the Palace of Westminster with electric light. So the House of Lords began it. In fact, they were the pioneers, and it went through until just before the First World War. They'd pretty well lit the whole place with electricity by that stage.
It's so interesting that the House of Lords was the first bit to have electric lighting, because so often we associate the Lords with the stuffy old bit, but also they were the first chamber to be televised ahead of the Commons as well. What is it about the Lords that makes them so futuristic?
I'm not sure. I think they feel themselves the more pioneering side, in fact. So they trial out these things first of all.
And of course the BBC installed microphones in the belfry to transmit that sound. My favourite fact about this is because the microphones are up here at the top of the clock, if you're listening to a radio broadcast down at the bottom, you're going to hear it on the radio, you're going to hear the bells on the radio before you actually hear the bells from the tower, because the speed of radio waves is faster than the speed of sound. When were all those microphones and the technological aspects of this installed?
The first time they installed the microphones was in December the 31st, 1923. So they were picking up the sound from microphones a little bit outside the tower on a building below, and then relaying that back to the Savoy Hill, so the BBC's earlier headquarters. And so a little bit later, a few years after that, they put the microphones inside the belfry.
Would this have been a grand day out to look across the views of London?
Yes, in the late Victorian period, we know by that stage that people were coming up to watch the winding of the great clock. So this became a feature of Saturday afternoons. People nicknamed the whole tower Big Ben. So that comes from the 19th century. And then in the 20th century, you have even more importance reflected on the tower when the chimes and the bells, mainly the sound of Big Ben, is used in the Remembrance Day service on Whitehall. So at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, you hear Big Ben strike, and then in the distance you hear the report of a gun, and that is the symbol that the war, the First World War, had ended. And then it was hit, of course, the clock tower during the Second World War, so it had honourable wounds from the second war as well, and it carried on. The clock itself carried on ticking, even with this blast on the exterior of the building. The clock didn't stop, so it was a symbol of the fortitude of the British. People listened by then to the clock chiming on the wireless around Europe, and of course they knew when they heard it that there was at least one free country still in Europe.
Elizabeth Tower standing there, resplendent, shining in its restored glory. The question now turns to the rest of Parliament. When will its own renewal and restoration project begin? I've been Tom Harwood for GB News.
Harwood for GB News, and I can tell you, I think they're going to get the clock starting as well, because it's stuck on midday, as it has been for the last couple of years. Coming up in just a couple of minutes, Colin Brazier, who is with me in the studio. And Colin, you were a royal correspondent for a long time.
He's still Tom Harwood.
He is still
He's still Tom Harwood. Nobody carries off that hat better. See the hard hat.
What do you think of today?
I thought it was terrific. I thought it was faultless. I mean, you know, there's that tired old cliche about military precision and all that sort of stuff, but it was precisely done. It was the product of lots of rehearsals and hard work in the wee small hours by, what was it, in excess of 1,200 guardsmen, 250 horses, and we've got 3 days more to come.
Yeah, it's only the beginning. What's coming up in a couple of months?
Well, we're trying to pull off that trick where you're condensing 4 or 5 hours of events into a few minutes. We've got Angela Levin, who I think is the great doyenne of royal writers. We've got a royal photographer, we've got a former editor of Horse and Hound, reflecting on the Queen's equestrian skills. Of course, she wasn't in the saddle today. Others were, including 250 mounted members of the Blues and Royals and Lifeguards. So a little bit of that, but just trying to sum up some of the frivolity as well. That an amazing picture of Prince Louis, Darren. Did you see Louis with a smile?
Soak up the atmosphere, yeah, and him on the balcony as well, covering his ears. That's it from me for today. Have a nice weekend. Dame Arlene Foster is here tomorrow.
You've been Darren McCaffrey.
I've been Darren McCaffrey. Have a nice weekend. Colin's up next.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
On radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices with honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
we're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Defence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hi there, welcome to Brazier. Some fast-paced news with a regal twist today from 4 until 6. In the next hour, the Jubilee celebrations have begun. We have a look back on the best bits from today. The Queen watched Trooping the Colour earlier, waving gleefully from the balcony. She was later joined by working members of the royal family. And the new portrait of the most photographed woman in the world. We'll show you that. And I'll speak to a leading royal photographer too. With me for the next 2 hours, Rafe Hedel-Manku, the writer, historian and royal commentator. But first, the latest news headlines with Polly.
Colin, thank you. Good afternoon to you. The top stories. As you were hearing, the first of the Platinum Jubilee celebrations have taken place today, with Her Majesty the Queen watching the royal fly past from the Buckingham Palace balcony. As you can see, Royal Air Force jets flew in the formation of the number 70, that's if you're watching on television, of course, to mark the number of years of Her Majesty's reign. The famous Red Arrows as well also took part in that breathtaking display, streaming the Union flag colours above Buckingham Palace. Then royal gun salutes were also taking place across the UK as part of celebrations. The Duchess of Cornwall, the Duchess of Cambridge and her 3 children, George, Charlotte and Louis, waving at the crowds during the carriage procession. The Prince of Wales, the Duke of Cambridge and the Royal Princess Royal rode on horseback in their military uniforms, and millions of people across the nation have been sending their best wishes to Her Majesty.
We do it really well in Britain, don't we? Nobody like us Brits can put on a show. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. I was going to say the music for me, the band was probably my number one, but I did have a glimpse of Princess Anne on her horse as well.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you saw Princess Anne, didn't you?
Oh, it was just lovely, and then there was all the carriages with Kate and Camilla and all those. It was just lovely, wasn't it? We're so glad we came. We ummed and ahed, but it was a lot of hard work to get here and so busy, but worth every minute, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
And thank heavens we've had the weather for it in London. Beautiful sunny weather today. Let's just bring you some breaking news we're receiving from multiple sources right now. Prince Andrew, we're told, has tested positive for COVID and will miss the Jubilee Thanksgiving service on Friday. Absent, of course, from those balcony celebrations at the front of Buckingham Palace today for that Royal Air Force flypast. People commenting on that. But the news just in that he's tested positive for COVID as an explanation for his absence, and he won't be at that Thanksgiving on Friday. Now, in international news, President Biden and the First Lady have wished Her Majesty a joyful Platinum Jubilee celebration, and they've thanked her for her friendship to the American people.
Your Majesty, congratulations on your Platinum Jubilee. For 70 years, you've inspired people with your selfless devotion and service to the people of the United Kingdom and the Commonwealth.
Throughout the years, the joy your visits to the United States have brought Americans and your solidarity with the American people in times of tragedy have deepened the friendship and profound connection between our countries.
On behalf of the people of the United States, we send you our best wishes to you and the people around the world marking this momentous and historic occasion.
Well, police have already arrested several protesters who entered the ceremonial route on the Mall ahead of trooping the colour in central London today. Animal rebellion demonstrators were dragged out of the way by police as a military band marched along the path at around 10 o'clock this morning. The Met Assistant Commissioner Louisa Rolfe says the force is working hard to give people a safe and fun day in the capital. Well, more than 1,000 people have been honoured in the Queen's Jubilee Honours list. Medical staff who worked through the COVID pandemic are among them, including NHS Director Professor Stephen Powis, who'll be made a Knight, and Chief Nursing Officer Ruth May, who'll be made a Dame. The actor Damian Lewis has been made a CBE, and crime writer Ian Rankin has been knighted on the Queen's Birthday Honours list, while former Northern Ireland First Minister and GBNews presenter Arlene Foster has been made a Dame.
Well, of course, this is a personal honour and I'm really delighted with it, but I hope it will be reflected back on the people of Fermanagh and South Tyrone who give me such support when I was their member. And indeed, as I say, as the first female First Minister, it's wonderful to have this acknowledgement.
Congratulations to Arlene Foster. Well, in international news, President Zelensky says Russia now occupies a fifth of Ukraine's territory. The Ukrainian leader says 100 people are dying every day in fighting in the east of the country. That comes as British military intelligence says Russia has lost control of most of the strategically important city of Severodonetsk. And the actor Johnny Depp has confirmed he'll join the singer Jeff Beck for the remainder of his UK tour. That comes after the actor won his multi-million-pound defamation lawsuit against his ex-wife Amber Heard. The jury unanimously found yesterday she acted with malice in a 2018 article in which she claimed she was the victim of sexual violence. Miss Heard was separately awarded £1.6 million after jurors also found Mr Depp's lawyer defamed her when he called her abuse a hoax. You're up to date on GB News. More news as it happens. Now, more from Brazier.
Well, a very good afternoon to you. In a few hours, with the sun having just set, the first of thousands of beacons will be lit across Britain and beyond. They will signal the close of the opening day of the Platinum Jubilee of Queen Elizabeth II. It's been a memorable day of faultless pageantry. More than 1,000 guardsmen, 240 horses, 70 aircraft, 10 military bands and a 6-minute-long flyover. But one smile really stood out today. Her Majesty on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, frail but obviously delighting at the sight of the Mall, packed with people drawn from far and wide. Well, the crowds enjoyed the sight, the bands and the bearskins, but also of the sovereign's great-grandchildren, George, Charlotte and Louis, all travelling in a carriage together, symbolising the future of monarchy for generations to come. Well, the temptation of a worldwide TV audience numbering hundreds of millions proved irresistible for eco-protesters who, perhaps not for the first time, probably did more harm than good to their cause, attempting unsuccessfully to hijack proceedings. Well, tomorrow, the focus of state ceremonials moves a few miles eastwards to Britain's biggest church, to St Paul's, for a service of thanksgiving that will be attended by hundreds of dignitaries, including the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Let's turn to Rafe Hadel-Mancu, who's been watching it all unfold close by Buckingham Palace today, is now here with me in the studio. Rafe, what really caught your eye, caught your ear today?
Well, I have to say, there was such a positive energy in the crowd. It was even more electric and alive than 10 years ago for the Diamond Jubilee, although there was, of course, a lot more rain then than there was today. But I would say it was a happy and glorious day, celebrating a happy and glorious reign. And, you know, after 2 years of COVID, everyone being locked up, the last two Trooping the Colours were very subdued affairs at Windsor Castle. What a comeback. What a way to actually say that we're back and to celebrate. And after so much anticipation of the Platinum Jubilee, it started the weekend off for 4 days with a real bang. Nobody does spectacle, pomp and pageantry like we did, and the crowd lapped it up.
The crowd is vital in this. I mean, Rafe, notwithstanding the contributions from very eloquent and knowledgeable commentators like yourself, we don't hear from the royal family. So the only voices we get to hear in terms of participants are the crowds you talked about. And it's a custom built for the Vox Populi, for the Voxes, the voices of the people. Heard some of them in the bulletin there, a couple who travelled from a fair distance away. We're so glad we did, they said.
And they weren't alone. I know Canadians who've come over, Australians, people from America who've visited. This really is a global event. I've often said the Queen is the first trans monarch in that she's a transnational figure, uniting people around the world. And you really saw that today with Commonwealth representation as well. And it just strikes me that 70 years is a wonderful achievement, but it's more than 70 years that we're celebrating, because the Queen is 96 and she's been part of British life for 96 years. And so everybody who's alive today, essentially, has a view of the Queen as reflecting our collective history, because she's played a role, or she's been present through all of the major milestones of our event. So today and this weekend isn't just about celebrating a lady who's stayed on for 70 years in a role. It's about sharing memories of the last 70 years, the last 96 years, the last 100 years. You know, she stepped out on that balcony 70 years ago today, on June the 2nd, 1953, for her coronation. But she was first there in 1935 for George V's Silver Jubilee. 1935, and then 10 years and 2 days later, she was there with Winston Churchill on that very same balcony with her sister and her parents. They're all dead. The Queen Mother remains. Wherever you look, all of those key moments in our history, the Queen has somehow been present. And that's made a big, deep, lasting impact on people's minds and their psyches, I think. They really equate her with the century.
And on the longevity question, I mean, as you put it very powerfully and gently, I mean, she's outlived so many of her contemporaries. I mean, there she was on the balcony today with her cousin, who's younger than her. But so many of those people, we just ran some black and white footage a few moments ago with the Duke of